For those of you that don't know, Assassin's Creed Codename Red is an upcoming Assassin's Creed game which is most likely going to be the first game in the Assassin's Creed Infinity live service. There is no official title for this game yet, which is why it's referred to as Codename Red. Now, from what we know, this game is going to be coming out after Assassin's Creed Mirage, so likely maybe around 2025. Many different teams work on different Assassin's Creed games, and this game is being developed by Ubisoft Quebec. Now, when I was doing research for this video, I just wanted to double check they were the team behind this game, so I typed in on Google, what team is developing AC Codename Red, and I just want to read you a little excerpt from Games Radar that came up for me. Ubisoft Quebec, the studio behind the sublime Assassin's Creed Odyssey. Sublime. Okay, alright. Yeah. Anyway. Now in this video, I wanted to give my initial thoughts and feelings towards Assassin's Creed Codename Red. What do I think it might be centered around? Do I think it's going to be good? What sort of a game, be it action, adventure, or RPG, do I think the game's going to be? So when you come out of this video, you're going to have a good idea about what the game is going to likely be like, as well as my thoughts on it, and maybe your thoughts will then also be elevated, I suppose. So, without further ado, press that subscribe button if you do end up enjoying this video and you want to see more just like this about Mirage, about Codename Red, about Hexe, and other games, and yeah. Let's get into this. Just a heads up, guys, I start by talking about Assassin's Creed Odyssey and why I didn't like it. Now, the reason I do this is because that is how I imagine AC Codename Red is going to be. Very similar in game design, very similar in everything like that. So bear in mind, when I'm talking about Assassin's Creed Odyssey, I'm talking about it with the lens of what AC Japan might also be like, and then as the video goes on, I do lean into that. Just a heads up so you know what's going on. So to start with, the whole idea of an Assassin's Creed game centered around Japan, feudal Japan to be more specific, and you're being basically a ninja. I see a lot of comments being thrown around saying shinobi, but I don't really know what that means, so you guys can let me know in the comments. It's what people have been saying to Ubisoft they want for so long now. We want a feudal Japan game, we want to be a ninja, we want to be an assassin ninja in Japan. Like, it's been something people have wanted for ages. People have voted for it in the Ubisoft polls that they sometimes give out where they say, where would you want to see a future game? It's always Japan, always being the most voted. And you know, I agree. I think it would be really good to see an Assassin's Creed game centered around ninjas, monks, that sort of thing in Japan. And I don't know too much about Japan history. Well, really, I don't know anything. So it would be really good for me personally to learn about that in a way. But more importantly, to have an amazing Templar assassin storyline with the backdrop of medieval Japan. But here's where things for me start to take a fairly rough turn, and that is what I mentioned. Ubisoft Quebec are developing this game. As that interesting quote from Games Radar stated, the sublime game, Assassin's Creed Odyssey. They developed that game. It's a love-hate. I don't think there's any in the middle. It's you love it or you hate it. Now again, this is my opinion, my personal thoughts. It's fair enough and it's fine for you to disagree if you want. I personally did not like Assassin's Creed Odyssey if it wasn't obvious enough. For those of you guys that are new to this channel and don't know my stance on the Assassin's Creed series, what I loved about the games was, at the heart of it, an Assassins versus Templar story. And the cherry on top of that story would be the amazing writing, character development. In the earlier games, they had a lot of nuance in the writing. I loved the ideas posed within the story and the writing. What does it mean to be an assassin? What does it mean to be free? What does it mean to say that nothing is true and everything is permitted? What do the Templars really want? What is their overall goal? I loved all of that stuff, and that is really what drew me into the series. And of course, I've always been really into history and that sort of thing, so that also really led into me wanting to play the games. Assassin's Creed Odyssey for me didn't do any of that. As we know, there were no Assassins and Templars, and the argument to be made is, well, it was set in a time before Assassins and Templars were around. Well, okay, that's an interesting conversation, because if you're playing an Assassin's Creed game, why would you deliberately set the game way before that when we've already had an Origins game? I don't know. And that's not the debate we're having today. Aside from that, it was, in my opinion, bad writing. There was no character development. You couldn't get attached and accustomed to the character you played as, be it Alexios or Cassandra, because the writing was based around these dialogue choices, but the dialogue choices were so drastic from one another, there was no actual character personality, because at one point you'd be a really kind, selfless person, and then the next you'd be an evil sort of bully, and it would just have no continuity, whether you tried to pick the same sort of dialogue choices or not. worlds. So there was no level of depth to the characters, because they'd just be flip-flopping between good and bad and weird and funny and serious, and it was a mess in my opinion. On top of those things, Assassin's Creed Odyssey was a massive bloated open world. It looked beautiful, I will not deny that. You know, Ubisoft's developers have always been brilliant at world design. Say what you will about games like Syndicate, Unity, and Odyssey, their game worlds are beautiful, they're detailed, but you can have a beautiful game world, but when there's nothing to do in that game world, it very quickly starts to make it feel bland. I feel like I spent half the time playing Odyssey actually just sailing across the ocean in a straight line and literally just scrolling on my phone until I get to my destination. Side quests weren't interesting, they were just a grind, and you were forced to do those until you could get to a high enough level to carry on with the main story, which would then be a disappointment. I feel like Odyssey suffered from being too big. It could be maybe somewhat of a good game, maybe that might be a stretch, but maybe if it was a lot smaller, it was condensed into maybe a 30-hour story, maybe even 40, but to be hundreds of hours and to be too big and to force you to go and do boring things so you can carry it was all too much. So when I hear AC Codename Red is being developed by Quebec, and on paper Odyssey sold amazingly and was on paper a success, I imagine they're probably going to have AC Codename Red play a very similar way and be developed in a very similar way. Now, of course, Japan isn't going to be a cluster of tons of islands like Greece was, but you have Japan and then you have islands around it. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's very similar to Odyssey in the way you have boat travel, you have a massive world, you're probably exploring the entirety of Japan, plus all of its islands. And I can very easily see it again suffering from the bloat and the filler that Odyssey had. As well as that, we know this game's going to be an RPG. I've even seen the word fantasy thrown in there here and there. So even though Mirage is looking to be like an older Assassin's Creed game with no mythology, with no bloat, a just small, condensed, and when I say small, it's not going to be small, but compared to these massive games, a small quote-unquote condensed game, that is a good experience, a good journey. Codename Red isn't going to be this. It's going to be very similar to Odyssey in the way that there's hit points, hit markers, leveling up, most likely mystical enemies like dragons, I wouldn't be surprised, a massive open world, and that sort of thing. I'm not saying a massive open world's bad. I've played The Witcher 3, it's probably my favorite game of all time. You can have a massive and long story and open world if it's done well, if it's not just filler, if it's meaningful content. If Codename Red is going to be very similar to Odyssey in the way of game design, then fine, that's the way it is. But make sure the content within this massive open world is engaging, is meaningful, is enjoyable, and doesn't feel like a slog, a grind. Make sure the open world isn't just full of bloat and nothing really in it. Have it be full of life, be interesting, be rewarding to explore. Don't force the player to go off the beaten path and to do bandit camps and to do side quests and to do things like that. And don't make those things feel like a grind. The Witcher 3 never once forces you off the beaten path. It gives you the choice to do that. And because the content off the beaten path is so good, it makes you want to do that anyway. Odyssey didn't really give you a choice. If you want to carry on with the main story where you got to go 10 levels higher and you've got a grind to do that. Is there good side stories? Maybe there's a few here and there, but mostly it's going to be fetch quests, grinding, and stuff like that. And I know the people who love Odyssey out there are going to hate on this video so much, but again, it's just my own personal opinion, and you're within your rights to disagree. If Codename Red wants a chance at being good and appeasing to the real fans of Assassin's Creed, and really the real fans of good game design, then you've got to make the world meaningful. You want to make the whole game meaningful. Make the writing good, make the story good. Give the player drive to progress through the game. Don't make them feel like, oh, I'm halfway through the game now, so I kind of have to push myself to finish it. Make them be like, I don't want it to end. When you don't want the game to end and you're sad when it does, even when you're about 70 to 100 hours in, that's when you know the game has done well. A game that does this tremendously well, and it's probably my favorite game of all time, is Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic 2. It was one of those games that I actually had to tear myself away from the screen so that I could actually get on with my life. Everything you did had meaning. All side quests led in and tied in somehow to the overall plot, to the overall character development, and made for a very meaningful experience. You wanted to do the side quests and the stuff you didn't actually have to do, the optional stuff, because it would aid and lend into your main overall experience to the point where you didn't want to miss that stuff. That's what I want to see in AC Codename Red. I don't want to just see boring side quests that are fetch quests. Gather 5 lion pelts and I will give you some drachmae. Well, that's Greek currency, but you know what I'm saying. I want to meet an amazing character that then has a load of great side quests that I can go and do if I wish to do so, and doing that will then aid my main story, will make me understand the context of the main story more, and will connect me to the characters more. This is called good character development, this is called good story writing, and this is called a good game. The game can be massive, that's okay, I'm not against that. I just want this massive game to be a good massive game, you know? When you get to 100 hours and finish the game and say, phew, I'm happy that's now over, that's when you know the game probably didn't do the job it was setting out to do. On top of that, with microtransactions, we know the game is going to have microtransactions, and if done tastefully, then it's not the end of the world. Odyssey, in my opinion, didn't do them tastefully, whereas Valhalla did them slightly more tasteful. I didn't feel like I was completely forced to pay for microtransactions in that game. However, they were forced in my face quite a lot. I think there can be a happy medium when it comes to microtransactions in a game. Have them there and be optional if you really have to, but don't have them flashing up in your face on every pause menu. Don't have constant reminders, and don't design the game in a way where it basically forces the player to have to pay for microtransactions just to get ahead in the game. If you can balance it well, then, you know, it's business at the end of the day. Fair enough, I guess. Anyway, now we're going to move on to kind of story stuff and game stuff itself. Now, I think there's a lot of interesting stuff that can be had within AC Project Red. I keep going Project Red, Codename Red. I think there's a real opportunity for a really great story here. I think if you're some sort of ninja, that can coincide with them truly behind the scenes being the assassins and stuff like that. There's so much opportunity to be had. I am not saying I'm the best writer ever, but I do really enjoy writing and I love being creative and I love just having fun with it. And if someone came to me and said, listen, you're tasked to create an Assassin's Creed story based off of medieval feudal Japan, it's going to incorporate ninjas, incorporate maybe like samurai and shinobi, I would be over the moon, and I really feel like I could create a really fun and interesting story. I just really hope the writers of the game and the people who create the story are not pressured by the higher ups to write something in a way that can coincide with a massive open world so that we can get in microtransactions and we get in loads of playtime hours that makes our investors happy, because I feel like that's kind of what happened with AC Valhalla. Darby McDevitt is a really good writer, as he's shown in Revelations, as he's even shown in parts of Valhalla, but I feel like their game was just so long to the point where his really good writing ended up kind of being convoluted by filler, by stuff that we didn't even really need to do. I truly believe that if Assassin's Creed Valhalla's main story was 20 hours to maybe 30 hours, it could have been amazing. If they just took out all of that unneeded stuff throughout the game, it really could have been something great. And it's not Darby's fault at all, it's the higher ups for putting pressure on what they want the game to be at the end of the day. So if there's anyone from Ubisoft watching, who knows, maybe in the future there will be, I don't know. That's the one thing I'll say. Yeah, you might be high up and you might be thinking numbers and results, and I get it, it's a business at the end of the day, but if you're creating art, then I feel you have a responsibility to produce that art with the most quality. Don't sacrifice art for the sake of success and gain. I genuinely think at the end of the day, if you create some sort of art with the intention of just making it as good as it can be, it will succeed. And sure, you can throw in things that are going to make more money here and there, but at the end of the day, if you want long-term, longevity with people like me who play your games, you need to deliver a solid product, not something that is just there to shill microtransactions and to get money. If the games continue with this trend, and so does Codename Red, then I won't be playing, and I know I'm just one small guy, but I know a lot of people will agree, and eventually I think more and more people will start to see what's going on, and you will lose faith in your player base. And yeah, you might gain new fans that don't know any different, but your business, in my opinion at least, will suffer because of it. At the end of the day, I think Assassin's Creed Codename Red, Assassin's Creed Japan, whatever you'd like to call it, has got a lot of potential, but it's up to Ubisoft to decide whether to unleash that potential, to actually make good on that potential or not. For the sake of all of us who are going to maybe play this game, and for the sake of people that don't know any better that will buy it thinking it's going to be good, I really hope it is good. Especially seeing we've all wanted a feudal Japan game for years now, probably since near the beginning of the series. Well, there you have it. That is my initial thoughts and feelings on AC Codename Red. What are your guys' thoughts and feelings? Let me know in the comments and let's get a discussion going. Whether you agree with me, disagree with me, or you want to add to any points I made, I'd love to hear it, because a lot of the time you guys do mention stuff that I'm like, oh, I never even thought of that, and it kind of sparks me to maybe make videos in the future and just to change the way I think about things. There's this one comment I saw a while ago on one of my community posts, and they mentioned Assassin's Creed Bloodlines and how it actually had a really philosophical storyline, and I thought, you know what, I never actually thought about that game in that way. I'm going to make a video on it. I'm going to play through it and make a video on it, and that is exactly what I'm going to do. So you guys do inspire me for life, future things, I guess. So yeah, as I said, I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you did enjoy this video, then press the like button and press the subscribe button with the bell notification on so you don't miss a video when I do upload. I love you guys. May the Father of Understanding guide us. I will see you soon. Goodbye.